Now by Jim Nagy from the Reese's Senior Bowl, and this is an interesting week for you, right? You're not evaluating players this week, but you are building relationships. What does SEC Media Days mean for you and for the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you asked. My wife said, "Why do you go to this thing again?" When I was getting on the plane, I told her, whatever we're doing so far has been working. I'm going on my 7th year at the game, and I said, I don't know if this helps or not, honey, but something's working, so I got to keep going to this thing. But it's multi-level. I mean, one, I love sitting with you guys and talking about the game, promoting the game. I love seeing the coaches and catching up with those guys. I mean, I usually talk to them on the phone enough anyway, but really it's about meeting these players and just like having a touch point. Just letting them know we're watching them and letting them, I got a little thing I hand them about last year's game and all the players we had drafted. So yeah, that's it, man. But it's fun.
I feel like the reputation of the Reese's Senior Bowl has gotten to the point where I know you've got to court these guys, you got to make your evaluations, you've got to invite them, but it's a place that guys want to go because they've seen the results for players that play in the game, and it helps.
It helps. When I took the job, some friends in the agent community were like, man, you got to wrestle the power away from us. And I'm like, what do you mean? And like, these players don't know enough about the game. So that's why we've hit social media hard over the last 7 years. And obviously it started it really, for me, it started in Starkville. It was the Dan Mullen reunion game when he was coming back with the Florida team. And we were just getting going my first year in, all our scouts on Saturdays. I've got 11 former NFL guys on this year's staff, and we'll be at games every Saturday. And we're down in the field, and we shoot them during pregame and really close-up video, because a big part of scouting, in my opinion, is like, what does the body type look like, And so I remember we had a video of Montez Sweat, and so we tagged the players in it, and all scouts leave games in the third quarter so they can beat the traffic out. So I leave at the third quarter. I'm driving back to Mobile through the back roads in Alabama, and I looked down at my phone, and I hope my wife's not going to hear this because she'd kill me. But I looked down at my phone, and Montez Sweat had retweeted the post and followed me, and I'm like, we got it.
Bingo.
This is it, So just raising the awareness level, because before, the agents were like, Jim, the players will come to us and they'll be like, what do I do with this? Should I play in this? Should I not play in this? And they're like, you need to get it to the point where, when they get the invite, they're like, oh, yeah, of course I want to play in this.
Sure.
And after 6 years, I hope we're getting to that point.
Has the transfer portal impacted anything about the way players are evaluated? Because you hear sometimes bowl opt-outs, whether or not that matters. Do NFL teams care about that? Do they care about multi-school transfer guys? Is that anything that gets brought up in the evaluation process for the NFL teams?
It does. When I was with the Patriots, we used to have an alert. We had all these different alerts, like if you had injury concerns or off the field issues or whatever. Like we had the little letters for each alert, and there was a T alert, and it was for transfers and for multiple transfers. Like at some point, there's a red flag that goes up. Like, why does this guy keep bouncing? Like, why can't he? But from the evaluation standpoint, a couple things in the portal that has helped clean up the evaluation process is if these players are doing it the right way, a lot of them are going to a different school to show a different skill set. Maybe they're not being used, the way they feel like they should be used. And again, when you're trying to figure out who the dude is, and that's the hardest part. The easiest part after you've scouted for a long time is like watching the tape and figure if the guy can play. The hard part is figuring out the person. Like, what's he going to be when we give him money and he's got time on his hands? Well, now with, if they're in multiple buildings, that's another whole group of people that have touched this player and know who this player is. So we call it sourcing. So these teams can now source multiple buildings, and you have to keep track of it. Like if you're going into, let's just say, I'm off the top of my head, Alabama, they've got this kid Isaiah Bond who just transferred from Alabama to Texas, right? So if I'm a scout, when I go into Alabama, I got to make a note. I got to ask about Isaiah Bond that day too. I can't just ask about the Alabama guys. I got to, because they're going to have an opinion on Bond and,
right,
and why he left. So it's created a little more work, but really if you do the work the right way, these teams should be making less mistakes, I guess is the best way to put it, because there's just more people to talk to.
I got to give Ian Fitzsimmons credit for this. Should probably be careful doing that. But we were talking the other day, and he mentioned Michigan last year and the number of draft gradable players that they had on their roster between guys that were actually drafted and guys that were UDFAs. And then he said there's a comp this year in the SEC.
Ole Miss. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Did he tell you that? Yeah, and again, you think about it, it makes sense. The teams with the most NFL talent are the ones usually standing there at the end. You look at last year's Final Four, and UW had a ton of NFL guys. I mean, they had two linemen go in the first 2 rounds. They had 3 receivers go in the first 3 rounds. They had Michael Penix go at 8. I mean, they had good players. Alabama had good players. Michigan had 14 guys drafted. So Ole Miss, we have over 20 draftable grades right now at Ole Miss. And that sounds crazy since there's only 22 guys on a football field, but it's because some of those guys are transfers.
Yeah.
So they're loaded. There's a reason why people are talking so highly of Ole Miss. I mean, they really do. This is the best roster Lane's had.
So when you look at those players and the ones that obviously you're recruiting for the Senior Bowl, is there anybody that really stands out for you?
I mean, shoot, they did a great job on the D. You get 2 pass rushers. Like, I'm not going to try to say Princely's last name.
Uman Mielen.
Okay, I got to practice that. But, yeah, getting Princely and getting Walter Nolan, I mean, you got 2 guys that can affect the quarterback in one portal class. I mean, those are great gets. We invited Ulysses Bentley last year. This might come as a surprise to some Mississippi fans, but there's teams in the league that have higher grades on Bentley than they had on Judkins.
Wow.
Ulysses,
why is that?
Because he's dynamic. He's an electric player, man. Like, I was at the Auburn Ole Miss game last year, and Brad Holmes from the Lions, the GM of the Lions, was there. Brandon Bean, the GM of the Bills, was there. And I'm down in the field. We love Bentley. Like, I when I went back and watched his SMU stuff, I was like, holy cow. Like, this dude is, like, they need to be giving this guy the ball more. I mean, he didn't pop on our radar until the Georgia Tech game, and he had, what do you have, like 11 carries that game or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, what are we missing here? But those GMs on the field that day, I'm like, what would you guys think if we invited this guy to the Senior Bowl? He's a backup. They're like, are you kidding me? Like, we want to see him. So again, Ole Miss fans might think that, oh my gosh, we lost Judkins, but I'm excited to see what Ulysses will do as more of a feature guy.
What's your evaluation at this point, and maybe from conversations that you've had with scouting departments of Jackson Dart?
Yeah, I haven't talked to a lot of people about Dart. I saw him at the Manning camp, so that was cool. That event is so valuable, just to be able to go there and see those guys throw and interact with each other too. Like, that's always interesting to see, like, who's the dude who's the alpha among the alphas of that group. But yeah, I mean, I thought he made a nice jump last year, and I really hope he stays healthy. Just because talking to some guys up there at Ole Miss, like, and they say this because they want to talk about his toughness. I guess he's really played through some stuff the last couple of years. You guys know better than I do, but
some stuff is an understatement at the end of last year.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they do. They really rave about the guy's toughness. So he's, my biggest thing is the quarterback spot. Can you win games? And he's won a lot of games. What, they won 11 games last year? Is that what they won? So yeah, Jackson's going to be in the mix. I mean, I think you talk about the quarterback spot, it's going to be him. Carson Beck, who was here yesterday, Quinn Ewers, who will be here today, Riley Leonard at Notre Dame is a local guy for us, but Riley's really good. I mean, is this class going to have 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12 like last year? No, it's not. But there's some good names.
Can Blake Shapen play his way into an invitation potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it this way, not even with all these guys. A year ago at this time, sitting at SEC Media Days, we didn't have a grade on Xavier Leggett from South Carolina. I mean, he was a special teams guy. He ran down as a gunner on punt team. He was their kick returner. He had like 168 yards receiving as a junior. Then he comes out week 1 against North Carolina, has like 170 some yards, like more yards in the first game than he had the previous season. So we're like, oh my God, we got to start watching this guy. And then he ended up being one of the biggest success stories we had last year when he was first round draft pick. Yeah. So these guys, it's important we do all our work on the junior and sophomore tape. But I tell all our scouts, like, we got to go in with an open mind, guys. These guys get better. So, yeah, Shapen's a guy I'll be interested to see.
There's this concept in the NBA where when they're going through the draft process, if a player has been in school for 3-4 years, it's a knock on him. He's too old. Do you hear that at all in college? Jackson Dart's going into his 4th year getting starts. Is that a similar concept in football, or is it totally different?
Totally different. No, totally different. I think the NFL, especially like at the quarterback position, look at last year's class. You had Bo Nix with 61 career starts in college. Denver Broncos didn't see an issue with it, right? The NFL is a less developmental league than it used to be. Again, I got into the NFL in the year 2000, and we used to be a lot more patient with players, and there was more developmental time. They almost have to be ready to go. The quarterbacks, if you draft a quarterback up high, between your fan base and your owner, you're getting him on the field, whether he's ready or not. I mean, everyone would love to do a Mahomes thing, and I think New England's going to try to do that this year with Drake May and start Jacoby Brissett. But most of these guys are going to play right away, so you better get your starts in college. So no, I don't think the age thing is less of a concern. I know exactly what you're talking about with the NBA. I actually think the NFL likes it that these guys are staying in more.
Certainly wish we had more time. He's got 4 Super Bowl rings. Jim Nagy, Executive Director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, visiting with us at SEC.